consortium was a way to give back to the community. We were very successful at Medtronic, prior to Medtronic, with implementing it. And the CEO at the time said, go do it, yeah. And so I became very passionate about it. It wasn't us, but we were wildly successful. We were very successful, bunch of average people. And as I mentioned in the intro, that all of Medtronic took note. And so it spread throughout Medtronic. It's still there today. I did it in one of the divisions. So I wanted to get back to the community because I said, boy, people have to, if people apply this to their business, it's mind blowing what they can achieve. And so we started, we built it all the way up to 48 organizations, including the mayor, Sheriff Rutherford. So we had a nice chunk. And then during the time you have the economic downturn. So what do people cut back on? That, what they really need to be spending their time and money on. And so I had continued on, and with Medtronic retired, then the CEO of UL asked me to come and help drive continuous improvement through his organization with customers. So I did that for 3 years, and that was, he let me be based in Jacksonville. And so that I was very fortunate. And then I got into some consulting with Fortune 500 companies, which I didn't have a great experience. They would bring me in. I would look at what they were doing and say, this is pretty simple, what you have to stop doing and start doing. And then they would lecture me on everything they knew. So, it got to the point where I said, you don't need me. You really don't, because you know it all. Okay, so find somebody else who will listen to you. I'm not going to do that. So, and there were some pretty good companies, okay? Because it takes certain type of leadership to be able to be the change agent, be the servant leader of this whole thing. So what happened was the board of the consortium came back to us and said, hey guys, it's not going well. Would you guys take it over? And it wasn't going very well at all. So we were starting from scratch, and we spent the last couple of years, Shane?
Like 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years, really building it back. And James spent an enormous amount of time developing training, which has proved to be straightforward. People get it. They learn it by doing it. And we don't throw all the bells and whistles in. We give everybody the basics and get them going. So he does all the heavy lifting with it. He does all the training. I join him for the coaching, and we go and we do site visits and all. And what we're doing is, and you probably realize, we're building relationships. We don't want, if we don't have the commitment from the senior leaders, we don't want to play.
I just want to say one thing, like we really talk about, if the company's not a learning culture to where like we really don't want to work with them, it needs to be something even everybody at the top realizes they can always learn more, they can always get better, rather than his experience with the Fortune 500, whereas, they're all experts in the field. We need a mindset where you're confident in your abilities, but also knowing that, there's always a way to get better each day.
Yeah, and one of the telltale comments that I hear is, been there, done that. Then I head to the door. I'm going like, this is not somebody who's going to want to be a continuous learner. So what we're doing now is a building consortium. We have about 10 companies that all board in at the top. In other words, the president, the COO, they want to do it, and they'll be wildly successful. Believe me. James said, this is what we're looking for. So we want to get to the point where we can be selective. And what happened is we have the consortium, and they go like, we want to get people certified. Okay, and can you come in and coach? So that's what I mean about a relationship that extends. And we don't even ask for that. Okay, yeah, we do that, and that's what we're starting to see from the people, because they know that we're in it to help them, not to, make $1 million or whatever. We're just there to help, and that they can see the benefits of it. And but it is a sell to people in a lot of companies. We've already done lean. How's it going? Well, we don't do it all the time, or we don't, So in any event, that's something that I learned. So we try to get people with the right mindset. I heard you use that term. It's so critical for people to have the right mindset. I think one of the professors at Stanford mentioned,
Carol Dweck.
Harold Dweck used a term, and she said, there's a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Well, we try and identify when we go and we talk to people, did the leaders have a growth mindset? Not every one of them, but the key people that could be the change agents, and that's what we really shoot for. My other comment, and I'll get into just this. I won't hit you with the dump truck with information.
And I think what we're gonna do is we'll talk to it, and I'll give you the notes, and then we'll share after the presentation, the PowerPoint with everybody in the group. It's just short, but.
Yeah, it's short, it's 10 slides. I think one of the. So when you talk about your personal life, that's absolutely true. And if you get people to understand these concepts, what adds value that they're doing and what's non-value added. And we have so many processes. People say, well, how can you do it in farming? How can you do it? Do they have processes? We can do it because there's plenty of waste there. And what we found in manufacturing companies is that only 10% of what they do is value added in the eyes of the customer. There's certain things they have to do, accounting, they have to have leaders and all that, but customers don't want to pay for that. But you got to do that, so you need to do that effectively. I use the word effective instead of efficient because I think effective takes into account you got to take into account quality. It's not going faster, it's maintaining and improving quality in the organization. So there's so many applications of this, and even what I learned from Toyota was I thought I had come up with something. They have a thing called an A3. It's really one sheet of paper and takes you through the scientific method.
11 by 17.
11 by 17. That's where A3 came from. But it was an enormous game changer once Toyota let this out. And I happen to have a mentor who let it out. He wrote a book on it, and he was an ex-Toyota guy. And so what we do is, we even use the A3 to coach people in behaviors. And we say, okay, poll their people, pick two things that your leader is doing really great, and the two top things you'd like to get them to do better. And we say, okay, we're going to go through this whole problem solving. What's the problem? How do you do more of what they like? And how do you begin to change two of those behaviors? And it's very powerful. It's a very disciplined approach to it. It's simple. And what we did when I was in the current, we did it from top to bottom, including myself. You have to be aware of your own weaknesses. You have to have people tell you you're full of it or it doesn't work. If you don't do that as a leader, then there's something wrong. You're not going to hear the truth, and you need to hear the truth.
Alana tells me that all the time.
Really? So obviously, I'm very passionate about this. We have the consortium. We have the training, and we have a partnership with First Coast Manufacturers, and they send their people in.
And we have the consulting practice.
And then we have a consulting
coaching, as we
practice.
like to call it.
It's more coaching. I mean, you can hire somebody to show you how to do certain things, but we're in there to say, how do you develop the right mindset to lead this?
What you'll get into, right, is like how this is, people say, is it tools, is it methods? It's really only 10% of that, 90% people. And so all this is about, as people have mentioned during this talk, is behaviors become habits that become positive actions, and to be able to do that each day.
Yeah, so I think the bedrock of what we use, and I brought in is Covey. 7 habits. That's how, when I came into Medtronic, which became Zomet originally, the culture was horrible. I mean, it was split based on nationality. Nobody would sit with one another. And so I had to go through it. And we brought the Covey people in. We learned it. And I will tell you, in the 17 years, we taught it every year. And we had the managers teach it to the other. And it's very simple, but it's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do and to maintain the discipline. But it really opens things up so that you're showing respect for people and you're helping them to get along. And so we adopted all the nomenclature and all, and it really was something. And in the lean world, people will tell you that companies are really knocking it out of the park. They're the ones that really had that Covey or Covey-like process with the people. And people aren't going to change overnight. So you got to give them time, and you got to keep working at it, and you have to be patient, which is really hard. And you can't give them the answers. You got to teach them how to fish. Or you come up with it and where to fish. Okay, and they'll do just fine. So I love this stuff. I mean, you know, I think it's a breakfast of champions. It's the greatest thing that happened to me in my whole career. You know, I've been doing it, forms of it, for 30 years, but when I really got into lean thinking big time was in 1999. And I went to a conference and was blown away with what the companies were achieving in all different industries, just not manufacturing. And so I was challenged by our CEO to come up with a strategy. I said, I think I got it. So after about 8 coffees and about 6, I was the last speaker at our strategic meeting up at Amelia Island. And the guy next to me was the R&D VP. He goes, watch out, he is wired. So I get up and I didn't give you 15 minutes at the presentation. So this is basically delivering value to the customer, engaging the people, you know, and having a discipline to the way we go about it. And so I didn't get 20 minutes into the chairman and CEO of the company said, I love it. Best thing I've heard in 35 years. Go do it. Well, that's great. I had read a bunch of books, maybe 3, and I had gone to this conference. Now I got to go do it. So they said, you know, I'm from New York, you know, so we have a little bit of a moxie or whatever to us, you know. So I figured, like, they said, go find the expert and to help you. So I figured, who's the best expert? Dr. Jim Womack wrote the book, Lean Thinking. So I just hounded him, trying to get the meeting with him. So finally thought he'd throw me off the trail and said, you want to meet with me? I have a major conference with 1,200 people. This is back in '99 over in Nice in France. If you want to talk to me, come. I said, no, I'm glad you brought that up. I have a manufacturing plant in France and I can be there to meet with you. It's like, oh no. But over the period of last time, we've become good friends, and he's been very helpful to me, and I've learned a lot from him. He's more of an academic, you know. He's a guy that could take something really complicated like the auto industry and lead a project out of Sloan School to distill down what were the Japanese doing, what was going on at Toyota and Honda, and he did. I think the one big mistake, if you talk to him and said, well, what do you think you would change? I would have never called it lean. And I understood what he meant because I looked it up one time in one of these super thesauruses. And you go in there and it goes, it has these positive meanings, you know, I mean, no waste and all that. And then it has another set of unprofitable and lack of resources, small number. And so I'm going like, I'm out there preaching this. No wonder people looking at me like, this guy's an idiot. So I think Womack realized that, and what I'll probably start off with, if you just go through this, is a definition of what lean thinking is. I can tell you, I have anybody I talk to, they give me a different definition. And a lot of people think they know what it is, and they don't. So when I was, what this book is about, I went to work for UL, and they said, well, what? The CEO, I said, can't do it. Why? I said, because I have a Japanese sensei and he told me that I needed to write a memoir when I retired. So I got to spend the next 6 months. I'm not looking to do a book. I just write a memoir. And the CEO of UL said, we really want you back. We'll pay for a book and we'll get a writer to work with you. What a deal. So anyway, it gave me a chance to put down what I learned about leadership. Okay, and the other thing is James gives out a book to people who want to learn about lean first grade.
Yeah, we talk about like a lot of the behaviors or stuff that you learn when you're a kid. And like one of the popular books that we use to begin our training is Everything I Learned About Lean, I Learned in the First Grade.
And it resonates with people that going, I got it.
Because
I know what this is about, workplace organization. You know, I know what this is about, trying to solve a problem together. So anyway, that was it. So I got a chance, I did a book. I didn't know, who am I? You know, I mean, but I got an opportunity to talk to a lot of top leaders, including Shad Khan, John Rutherford, and many others who I did the book. I picked 10 characteristics of a leader, and I picked somebody who I thought really exemplified that. So I wanted people to see is there are CEOs that get this. You talk to some people, none of them get it. No, there are guys, I know who they are, you know, and they get it. There are companies that get it, okay, and have stuck with it for many years. I mean, I went to school up in Rochester, New York. I know Wegmans is just a supermarket is awesome. Their culture is based on servant leadership, respect for people, and continually getting better. I think Publix, to some extent, I've been talking to some people there, the way they treat you, they put the customer first, okay? And Nordstrom, you know, you can say, oh yeah, there's pockets of it. All I know is there are some decent pockets of it. When you think that less than 10% and people really take full advantage of lean, you say, why? Well, let me just explain what it is. And lean thinking is an organization-wide strategy. It's not a program. It's a strategy. It's a journey. There's no beginning. There's no end. You just keep going. It's like the kids in the car. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? I used to have executives that, are we getting close? No, and we're never going to get close because we're striving for perfection. If we strive for perfection, we might hit excellence on a regular basis. So it's hard for people. They want to know, when does it start? When does it end? Never, you know, and you never, I learned something, everybody I'm with, I learned from other people. I'm a continuous learner, and insatiable, and he is too, you know, I mean, we're very proud of that. It's an organization-wide strategy that focuses on delivering ever more value as defined by the customer. I don't know how many organizations I've been. First of all, who defines value? Oh, the marketing people do. No. You talk to the customer, find out what the customer really wants, and listen to them and pay attention, and they'll tell you. Or they don't know what they want. Good. Ask good questions and draw it out of them. You know, you have to go through that method. And then as a five, through continuous improvement of processes to eliminate waste. As I said, I guess the number is 95% of what companies do, at least in manufacturing, is waste. So the opportunity is incredible to do things, but you have to do it in systematic fashion. And Lean does this by engaging people in all levels of the organization. We say, if you're doing this right, everyone, everywhere, every day is trying to make things a little bit better. And they know what the overall vision is and the concept, where you're headed. And we have some tools to say, okay, if you want to do this, look and see if it matches up with this simple chart. Good, just go do it. At Medtronic now, they do 45, they could really small. On average, 45 of these things.
Quick improvements.
Quick
Could be little, could
improvements.
be big, but
They might be up to 60. The people just do. Do they ask, can I work on this? You look at our alignment chart. If it's something that fits that, just go do it.
they have that unparalleled trust, even the bottom of the organization, towards they can just go in and do improvements without even having to ask.
And the important thing was to teach them how to fish. How do you solve a problem? Most of what we do with process is problem solving, right? And people say, well, do you do lean? Do you use Six Sigma? You know, we're probably more centered in lean because it's a strategy. Six Sigma to us is methods. And you could say agile. Agile is a derivative. The husband and the wife got together and looked at what lean thinking was and dumbed it down and decided to. I'm not saying it's bad because it is doing great stuff in the IT area. It's resonated with people, but it's only a portion of what lean is. Do we use Six Sigma? Absolutely. There's certain things when you have multivariate, you got to solve something. You need to say it's less 4% of the time. Why would I drive a Mercedes down the road when I can get down there in a car at half the price and all? You know, I mean, I can do it. So we like to do it, you know, in the
If you
simplest.
had to define Six Sigma, how would you define that?
Well, Six Sigma looks to take variation out of processes.
Okay.
Okay, so it goes and it studies the different variables, opportunities for error, and it looks at all the things in a process and says, let's eliminate this variation. From my point of view, that's great. But also from my point of view, I think lean, eliminating the waste first, although you would use Lean Sigma if you got a burning problem. Why do I take the variation out of something I'm going to eliminate? So I started off doing that.
I think like the main difference really that we talk about is lean is an every minute, every day thing, whereas Six Sigma is more about projects.
Yeah,
big
the thing
projects.
with Six Sigma, it's project based. It's not that we don't do projects, but we do 80% of these small aligned things and 20% of the project. I don't know about you, but some of these projects have no end to them. And even at Medtronic, when they shifted over to Six Sigma, now they're back to lean. Yeah,
Six Sigma never ends. I mean, it's 99.9999.
Yeah.
And what you need, your Kia is Two Sigma, right? It starts and stops. It does everything damn near every time, and it will forever. We don't need a Six Sigma automobile. We need a Two Sigma. And I think when organizations start doing the Six Sigma part, like more efficient, more condensed, and you don't need that. You need it in airplanes and submarines is where you need 99.9999. And everything else, 99%
exactly.
of the time,
Yeah.
you start your car, it's gonna
And
start.
what we do
It's
is,
okay.
let's see how far we can get by eliminating the waste and
Yeah.
organizing, value mapping,
Right.
seeing where it is,
Yeah.
and putting standard work in.
Right, and that lean gets you to the Two Sigma 90% of the time,
Right,
which is where
right.
you need to be.
Yeah,
And so that's probably why they went from one to the other. And
yeah. But the other thing is a leadership thing, okay? And I can tell you, like, at Medtronic, okay, they shifted away from what we were doing, let's say, because they brought somebody in from GE who was a master black belt. So they went after, they trained 3,000 people. After 5 years, how many people do you think were doing a project each year? 4%. And how many of those 4% were completing the project? Less than half. Because what it is it's episodic. It's a project. This other thing is every day you're doing it. You're involved in every day. And the other thing is the black belt, from my standpoint, creates a superstar. He's a black belt. Who gets all the credit? The black belt. Well, no. Is that showing respect for people? So that's where I differ on it. But without some of the tools, like problem solving, we used to make. Why? Instead of PDCA. Because the people got it. They said, I said, which do you want? The people that are money earners, the people that are creating value. What do you want? And they go, we like the MAC because we understand it better.
Calling it the what?
So I'll explain real quick. It's the MAIC is using Six Sigma originally. It's define the problem, measure what's going on, analyze, what the root causes are, and come up with some countermeasures, and then have that in your improvement plan. And then control is about sustaining it. Whereas and then there's PDCA, which is used in lean a little bit. Now it's kind of it varies what companies use, but it's plan, do, check, act. The thing he's talking about is the MAIC's just a little clearer for anybody to understand,
Right.
rather than plan. What does that mean? Define. Well, we're defining the problem. Like everyone understands that.
So a lot of the companies shift up. Now, who was the biggest company doing Six Sigma? One of the biggest ones. Was it GE? You know what GE's doing today? Lean. CEO is probably one of that took over Larry Culp from Danaher, probably the top CEO in the world. And he takes his presidents with him, and they spend 4 days doing an event. Lean event. He still, as the CEO, teaches it to other presidents. So that's the commitment. Why? Because he was so successful at Danaher and he knows it works. And, it's a real heavy lift. I mean, they split into 3 companies and all that. If anybody can turn it around, this guy can. And so they shifted because lean focuses on the customer. What GE got into, they got into internal efficiency. You know what I mean? This starts with the customer. What does the customer want? And so, but you need it all, okay? There's aspects of Agile that are very good that help people in IT and all get it. So, it's all, whatever works for you. I just found in my 30 plus years of doing this, that this seems to have more staying power. You can't kill it unless you don't do it right.
We've got, it seems to generate more excitement at all levels of the organization, because once this gets rolling, people get really excited, and it's amazing what anybody can do.
I think the excitement is like I did some lean projects at Naval Air Station, and when you get the lowest person, I don't mean like whatever, the lowest, most basic worker into a room with the senior people, like your post-its are yellow, yours are blue, yours are green, and even the most junior guy puts his name on there, his process, then he's able to say, well, it seems like my green should be on the left of your right, and then you start to see from the very bottom to the very top. Sometimes your brand new employee who's only been there for 3 weeks knows the process better than you as the leader, as manager.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I think lean is so great. You get that buy-in across, and people are like, oh, wait, that makes more sense. You flip 2 post-its, same process, but in a different order, and I think that's why it's got that staying power, because it just makes sense. And you as a leader can involve your entire team and say, what do you do? How do you do it? And then what? And then what? And then what? And it gives people a voice in the organization. Because frankly, a lot of organizations, people do not have a voice.
Yeah.
That's why I left my last organization, $24 billion a year company, and there was just no voice. But when you start putting in these lean type things, that to me seems to be the connector.
Yeah, and so anyway, I mentioned Larry Culp, the people that know lean is that he says it's vigorously implementing improvement every day, over and over, everybody. What do you want? 30 people out of an organization of 1,000? I want everybody involved in it. But in order to do that, they need coaches like yourself that can help them get through it. And I think the same applies to financial. It all fits together. It's making it simple enough so people can get it, and they can understand how their behaviors trigger negative results and where all the waste is. Okay.
You want to talk about principles?
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll cover. I was originally going to do PowerPoint, but
I'll send it to everybody.
You'll send it. But so anyway, the brilliance of Jim Womack was they did the study out of the Sloan School, and back in the 80s, we were getting our butts kicked by the Japanese. Toyota was just clean on top. When I grew up as a kid in the 50s, anything from Japan to China was jumped and it broke. Well, that changed. And the leaders at Toyota created a burning platform. We've got to compete with these big 3, but we have these small volumes. How are we going to do it until we can build them up? And so that really went on. And what Dr. Womack, he's a professor at MIT and all, and what he did was he and his partner, Professor Dan Jones from the UK, they were able to take all this information that this big team, and then was able to distill it down so it was understandable. And it was like, wow, that's the genius of these guys. Jim is like, take complicated things and make it so a layman can understand it. And so
They were studying the Japanese or the
Japanese.
United
And
States?
when you studied everybody around the world, the Germans, the Japanese, but it really came that the premier thing that was going on with some of the Japanese companies.
How did the Japanese?
They took it from us.
Like we're talking about Frederick Taylor and then Henry Ford.
Henry Ford, they got the whole thing of flow from Henry Ford.
A lot of it was the U.S. military after World War II, teaching them the methods of TWI.
Training within industry. What happened is all the men went off to war, and the women had to build a munition. So they got the 3 top industrialists in the country and said, how are we gonna do this? And they brought their people in, and they came up with what's called training within industries, okay? Very disciplined, but it worked brilliantly in building munitions and all. So what Toyota, American companies adopted it, but what do? We stopped doing it. Toyota adopted it, and they're still doing it today. It's the center of the way they get people trained properly and effectively. So anyway, they took that from us. Their visual management, everything's visual because you want to see a problem and you want to understand what's going on. They took that from Piggly
Woodley.
Really?
supermarkets.
So like some of the leaders at Toyota came, I think in the 50s, came here to study the big three. And what they found was that, yeah, they saw some good things, but really the US supermarket blew their mind. And that's how they set up their system. And we kind of can explain how that works, but
Yeah,
visual methods
yeah, it's all visual methods and all.
about replenishment based on use of whether, if something's gone, you see it's gone, you put it back.
So,
You don't produce more. you
so
know,
I talk about the brilliance of these guys. They really are brilliant guys. I mean, I wouldn't want them running my business, but they can study something and they can break it down. And Jim would say, I'd be the worst guy to do that, but I can tell you how it's done. So anyway, what they did with it was, they came up with 5 principles. And Covey always says that principles are timeless, inarguable, okay? And what they did was said, the customer defines value is principle number 1. Nobody else. They define the value. So go find out where they see value. Number 2 is go map, like you mentioned, Chris, the process and see what's really going on. And you look at what's going on, you go, this is nuts. Because you go in and say, what are the steps? What's the information? You just throw a little map. You can do it with Post-it notes. And, they have all these icons. I'd rather do it hands-on with Post-it notes. We're doing that with some clients right now. And then what you do is you try to take it and put it into a flow. In other words, how can I make things better? What waste can I take out? Which is your future map. Here's where we are today. Here's we'd like to take this process end to end, okay? And then you want to do is the 4th thing you want to do is get pulled. You don't want to make things ahead of time. The next person in the line, no matter what it is, if they should give you a signal. I want more now. Don't push it at me. I want more now. So you eliminate the waste in between. And the last thing is people say, how do you keep doing this? How do you keep it? Well, the 5th principle is perfection. If you're shooting for perfection and you're really working your butt off, you're going to hit excellence. But you're never going to be perfect. But it's a moving, it's always going. That's the mindset. So that's where people have a hard time. They say, well, are we there yet? It's a no, you're never going to get there. But it's a wonderful journey to go through. And if you can apply it to your personal life, I know people that do it in their personal life. I'm not that great at it in my personal life, but I know people that do it. Yeah, and he does it, and it makes all the difference in the world because you eliminate things that aren't that important. The biggest problem people have is not selecting what to work on, it's deselecting. Taking those ones and say, this goes in the parking lot, or this goes in the garbage pail, okay, in the bin.
Well, and that's one thing I just wanted to say. We say the 5th thing being strive for perfection, and I don't want people to think that means being a perfectionist. It just means we're reaching a level we're never going to reach. But experimentation is the whole thing. It's not a paralysis by analysis thing. It's just let's go do some stuff. Let's make some improvements and realize we're never going to get to that level where it's perfect, but keep trying it.
So I think perfection is getting it to be as good as it needs to be.
Right.
It's just as good as it needs to be.
Sure.
And you're always that's gonna move or whatever.
Yeah,
the
but you
thing
can do a
is,
little better, but it only
you
needs to be this.
get a little better, but it's a point of diminishing return.
Right.
But so that's what it is. So what would you want to do? You want to teach people how to fish. But you know what? As a leader, if you're not the type of leader that models that behavior, people, they're gonna follow you. People want to know, can I trust you? Are you honest? Okay. Do you know who I am? Do you care about me? Are you committed to be successful so I'll have a job down the road? That's what people want to know. They want to be assured that they're dealing with somebody who cares about them, that you exemplify somebody who, I serve you. People, I used to have 1,600 people amongst 8 plants, right? And people say, how many people you have working for? I learned this from Tut. I serve 1,600 people. Who creates the value in the eyes of the customer? The people that do the true value-added work. Those little people out in the factory, or those other people, the tellers, and
People at the bottom of the industry.
Those
I don't like
people-
that word, but yeah.
and I would say, so when we tell them you're money earners,
Yeah, we call them the money owners.
who are them money earners? They're the ones that earn
Frontline
money.
employees.
How do we in our positions help them earn more money for the company? And when you get everybody engaged every day, you can walk in, and you probably still can do it here. I've been gone for 11 years, but you can see, you can feel it, you can see it, and you can touch it. These people are excited about coming to work. Can you believe that? I mean, like, now, James, there was a Gallup poll.
Well, they do it every couple of years on, about the experience of the US workplace for the people. And that they found they do percentage, and they have 3 different categories, whether it's the people are engaged, like they're fully in, whether the, like, kind of like the show me state, Missouri, they're like Missouri, show me. And then maybe I'm on the fence, I don't know if I'm gonna get any better. And then the people that are actively disengaged, meaning they're trying to torpedo what the company's doing. I don't know if anybody's seen the film Office Space, or what they're like trying to do there. That would be the best example of actively disengaged. And they did the percentages of all different industries, and hundreds of thousands, I think up to a couple million people were polled in this survey. And they do this every couple of years, but what they find, like, about 35% of employees and companies are all in, right? Like, they come to work, they're excited to be there, they're gonna do the best job they can. And they find about 40 to 50% just go through the motions. They're kind of sleepwalking through work. They clock in, they clock out, they just, want to live to see another day. And then they found it varies between 15 and 20% of people are actively disengaged, meaning they are gonna try to hurt what the company's doing because they're so disgruntled, or they're just not even gonna be doing their work. They're looking to get out. So,
Question.
Go ahead,
Um,
please.
Just you emphasized the customer sets the value, and that focus on the money earners that are doing the actual work. I'm just curious, because I was part of a company many years ago who had a focus where they used to say employees first, and they were very focused on the money earners at the bottom, being happy and equipped and capable and doing the work they need to. They got new management that was a customer first, and they lost a whole bunch of good people, and their value went down a whole bunch as well. Do you see that like overemphasis on customer, you forget the people actually doing the work?
Yes, all over the place. I worked for some guys that, I was one of the officers of the company, and they sold the company the company was bought for like 4 years earlier for something like 84 million. They sold the company to Medtronic for 830 million. I've done this over and over again, these guys. I've invested in something because I know these guys have. So what they do is they came in day one, they say, we're not wearing suits anymore. We're in Florida, and I'm not Mr. Treese. I'm Jim. This is Barry. They would talk to the guy that swept the floor. They take a walk out and talk to them and treat them like, and give them 100%. And they had a say. Take care of the people. They'll take care of your customers and your stakeholders and your shareholders. If you implement, go ahead and implement correctly, we'll do just fine. And they pounded that away over and over. And that's what I saw was a good fit. That's why that CEO said, oh yeah, I love this. Let's get everybody involved. Let's give them a piece of the action. Let's give them monthly, bi-monthly bonuses.
when you say, I think it's really important that the company purpose, that every employee knows what that is. And then I don't think you run into that problem as much, because all employees know the reason you're in business is to help the customer, right?
I think the thing I experienced was we had a servant leader Well, it was from servant leadership from the top down, and that changed to someone who had an accounting mindset, like penny pinching, number crunching, streamlining things to the point of like, ridiculousness.
Yeah.
Even like the words that you would say while talking with certain types of clients on certain things, like ridiculous levels of streamline for a group of highly trained professionals. And we got to the point where we went from, servant leadership to penny pinching.
Exactly. It's a traditional style of what they're, being direct, direct command and control. I mean, I can say you can do improvements like this, but we don't play in this unless we have servant leaders we're dealing with. And the thing is that's where the coaching comes in. You need to really have an individual coach help you get there. I have over the years, when I became a vice president, I had a guy for 9 months that was one of the top manufacturing executives at Johnson & Johnson. And he was my coach. He taught me routines I had to do, how I needed to look at things, and emphasize the importance of being a servant leader. And so you gave a great example of that, and the thing is, I'll give you an example of what I did. My dad ran a plant, my grandfather ran a plant, different industries, okay? And I learned it from him. It was like, get to know who the people are, spend your time out on the floor. I spent 80% of my time out on the manufacturing floor. I had 8 plants. I just constantly been around to them. And what I do is have breakfast, one group, 15 people. And next day have lunch. I participated in an improvement event. And I would say to them, we're going to have a meeting, breakfast. I'm going to tell you about myself. I'm going to tell you why I come to work every day, period. And that's what I did. And I said, here's who I am, good, bad, and I'm going to be honest with you. Here's what I'm good at and all that, and what I'm not good at. And that really resonated with me. And I said, only thing I'm going to talk about workers. I come to work every day at Medtronic and love it because their motto is alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life. Who can't get excited? So you tie people into the purpose. Well, what happened was, then I would go out in the area and go to their places where they worked. And then what I did was really hard was I got all the names and I had their pictures and the departments, and I had it on a computer. Before I visit, I do a refresher. And if somebody told me something about their mother being sick or somebody, I put it in my note and then I put it there and I could ask them the next time. That was worth its weight in gold.
Also, you gave them 100% of your attention.
Yeah,
Talking about who it was.
I would, or they say, I said, well, did you bring up this problem? Oh, he has been out here for a month. I said, I can help with that. What are you doing up in the office? Get out there. You're supposed to serve these people. So the only way I could do is I had to get about and do that and do that. So that's part of being servant. The other thing is, I set an example. I've told this over and over again. I was not organized at all. I had everything all over. And yet I'm telling them they have to work. So I committed and I said, I'll get somebody from IT to help me organize my computer files. And I'm going to organize my whole office. And what I did was I did that. It changed my life, the way I worked. I mean, I didn't carry papers around all the time. And I said, okay, I have organized. They thought I had Alzheimer's because I was putting names next to my stapler and all. It was a wood stuff, but it was clear, kind of clear. And so I said, here's the deal, guys. I've done it. I'm asking you to do it. I wouldn't ask you to do anything I wouldn't do. And here's the deal. To keep me honest, you can make an appointment whenever you want to come in and audit my office. And it was always that way. And they would go, he's really something. And then, so then I get managers that weren't doing it. The people on the floors, they go, time out. I do the white Jackson white glove tour. Yeah, Michael Jackson. Like, this ain't gonna cut it. I'll be down tomorrow. I better see a different situation because we're trying to model behavior. So it's a whole thing about that. The other big point I want to get across to you that is, this is about experimenting, not driving the car off the cliff, but you try stuff. When people say, well, my boss would say, what if it doesn't work? That's okay, we'll try something else. But you gotta get it right. No, we don't. I learned more from something with that experiment. Now look at Edison. Failed 10,000 times in 1 year. Look at what he created. He learned and put it all together. And that's the whole thing is you gotta have that, the no blame. Don't blame the people, blame the process and go get after the process. So, I mean, I'll finish on this one with it, I didn't want to, I could bury you with information. I don't like it when people do it to me. If there's some things you can take away from this talk, and we can point you in the right direction and all, but we're dead serious about this. Until I'm up to my last breath, I'm going to be working on this consortium to share this in the community. They're doing some of this in the schools, not with the kids as much as they are this new Green. She is doing some of that stuff. They could do a lot better, and but I'll leave you with what Womack said to me. He said, you know what? I went over to Japan and met with the top people of Toyota, and this guy comes out. He's the number 2 guy. He goes, "You Americans don't get it. You don't get it." And he goes, "What do you mean? I don't know everything, but I've been studying this since the early 80s and all." He goes, "You don't get it. You put good people in bad processes and you get bad results. So what do you guys do? You fire them or move them out, bring in people who you think are even smarter, put them in bad processes, they still get bad results. It's not the people. You need to set people up for success. And the way you set them up for success is you create standard work. And that's the last key thing I want to get across. Most places we go, there's no standard work. Oh, there's SOPs that are in some file cabinet, but how does the person do the job? So before you can improve anything, you got to stabilize. You got to get standard work in place. And we're in the midst of doing that with a company that's going to grow from about 100 million to 500 million in the next 5 years. And they recognize that they got to change. And
we make it simple and visual and easy to follow, and that we find that as a key to really getting people moving with this.
So I hope that you'll invest in trying to learn more about this. We can give places that distill it down. I mean, even the guy that was my mentor, who did the A3 out of Toyota and the value mapping, John, who did the value mapping with Rother. And he went in when I was at a conference with him. He goes, I said, "What's wrong, Doc? I don't know, there's so many books here. There's so much stuff here." Everybody's, and I did a book myself. But he says, it doesn't need to be this complicated. And, so anyway, that's the thing about it is you learn about it. If you have the right mindset, you need a coach. You need somebody that will tell you the truth about yourself. Without that, you're lost because you just lie to yourself and you rationalize things. So that's where I see the coaching being so valuable. And even with people, I had people with coaches. I had 2 people that were really good that we had good experience. They did coaching all the middle management and all that. So anyway, I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavor for this. It's great stuff. My brother used to run Coca-Cola and unfortunately passed away 11 years ago. And
Brian operations in North America.
Yeah, in North America. So he had 60 plants. He had the biggest fleet. And he came in and he says, I said, "Show me the stuff you're doing." They're doing 6 Sigma, but it's not going anywhere. So on a Saturday, we went into the plant and we saw it. He goes, "Oh my God, this is like printing money." He brought it to Coca-Cola, across Coca-Cola, and had fabulous results. Then he took a job as the president of Anchor Glass and applied it there, and unfortunately passed away from a sudden heart attack. But he was like, "This is great." It's great. He says, it works everywhere, but you have to have, it's not the problem on the people on the floor. They love this because you get them involved. It's the middle managers. They have to become coaches now.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of telling people what to do, they got to be able to ask questions. And I use Lincoln as an example here because he's the one guy that I think epitomized servant leadership really well. Exactly. He wasn't perfect. He had all flaws and all. But what he was great at, Abraham Lincoln, I've read 90 books on him. I met this guy. I said, this is, at least he stood the test of time.
Mhm.
And so the whole thing with Lincoln, the big takeaway was McPherson, right? He's a Pulitzer
James
Prize,
McPherson.
James McPherson, that person. He highlighted this, and I hadn't seen anybody really highlight. He says, you know what the brilliance of Lincoln was? When he was a lawyer, he would look at the case from both sides. He'd find out everything like he was going to argue for the opposition, and then he'd get his. What Lincoln would do was he would use, similar to DeMay, to find the problem, but he didn't trust anybody to give him an unbiased opinion. So he would do it himself until he got comfortable with two people. And he says, you can go tell him because I know you will look at this objectively. And that's what differentiates the people at Toyota and the companies that are really good. So
And that's what we talk about. It's like with a beginner's mind, like your so-called experts, you look at a process with a beginner's mind. So you're unbiased and you're able to make the best objective, decisions, because most times people jump to solutions because they have this perception of something without really studying it. And that's something to whereas that kind of behavior, so whereas he's arguing both ways.
And
Yes,
people
I
know when
know
you're
that.
manipulating them. So we have a guy that's got a lot of good questions. So we set people up with standard work as leaders, and so okay, these are the type of open-end questions that are non-threatening. You gotta have the mind of a beginner. You don't know anything about this. Don't bring in what you saw and try to understand what's going on. And then a lot of solutions come out of that once you really look at it. But I used to have people up in a conference room go, oh, well, we need to do that. I said, you didn't even go through the DMAIC process. And second of all, we don't even do that on the floor anymore. We haven't done it for 2 years. You want to talk about the problem? Let's go out on the floor and talk about it and see what's actually going on. That's true of any process. So anyway, thanks to your invite, the opportunity to
Got a lot of
talk.
questions. Yeah, I imagine everybody has some questions. One of the questions I have, just to get it started, is you were talking about the Gallup and the 3 categories.
Yes.
And so how do you get somebody to get just a little bit better? In other words, go from the middle where they're just there. How do you get them to go to become engaged, or how do you get somebody who's actively engaged to become at least there?
Well,
We use the A3. I mean, the A3 is
Okay.
it's a
Tell
technique.
me again about the A3. What is the A3?
A3 is just the whole scientific method. So we go, okay, where is this person now? Define where they are now. What are the issues? And then you go and you analyze, you interview them. Okay, what are you doing here? How do you do this and that? And then you pick 2 things. You poll the people and say, the people are saying this is what they're looking for from it. This is something you're not doing. You're not accessible to me. You're always in meetings with it.
Right.
And you work on those. But what happens is they have to post that in their area in front of their people. This is what I'm working on.
Yeah.
Let me know and so that's the transparency.
Right.
And so you're not trying to do a 360. We're trying to change all these things. Get 2 things, move on to the next 2.
From what I found, the best area is that like 50%, we're kind of in the middle to get them engaged. And a lot of how you do that as a leader is if there's a long-standing problem or if they had a suggestion, nothing happened, let's actually go do that. And then show that there's that trust there. Then you get a lot of those people and you're building that kind of mobilized army. And then the next you focus on the actively disengaged piece. If you can get one of those person engaged, they're worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, they are. And I think like what I used to do is go to people. I learned this after a while. How you doing today? Good, 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 good. How you doing? And then I finally said, okay, let me say, how you doing? Good, good, good. How are you doing? I'm doing terrible today. I'm miserable. Good, 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 good. They weren't listening to what I was saying. They were going through the motions. So what I started to do was, I'm not really great with COVID, but I always shook people's hands and looked them in their eye when I stop. And I go, how you doing? And they go, good, good, good. You can tell, how you really doing? They almost threw up on me all the time, and it worked like a charm. Oh, you wrecked my chair, this is wrong, and this is right, and I'm going, well, slow down, let me write some of these things. If we fix some of it, oh, that would make a big difference to me, okay. And then I got the man and said, you need to talk to the people and find out what they're frustrated about and start removing the frustration. So that was a great lesson for me. Like, what do they go? He really cares. I used to have people run up the hallway with their A3s. These are people that are production workers, the money earners, and they wanted to show it to me and show me what they had done. It was incredible. I'm going like, I went to two Christmas parties, one after I left. And I had spouses come up to me and thank me. I said, what are you thanking me for? Oh, he's such a better husband. He's so easy because he feels good about going to work. He gets to report out on his projects. And I go like, what the power we have of changing the quality of people's lives. It's unbelievable.
One thing I want to say, we talk about the customer, right? And you don't want to alienate people. Well, there's the external customer and then the internal customers. Everyone you work with, everyone that touches the process, and how you need to provide value to them, no matter who you're passing information or materials or work to. And that's really the way you do that, is by, what are your frustrations? Let's get rid of some of these frustrations. And then that's when we see really like the implementation.
I know we're running over, but can we just get the data?
Oh, yes, well, you've been with the 10 minutes.
Okay, so other questions you have about this or anything like that? They used to be part of the consortium, now they're,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's the Naval Air Station, and really we had a kid. He was probably in the Navy for a year, maybe.
Yeah.
And he was the guy that moved 2 Post-its, and what we ended up doing was taking a desk. We moved it from this side of the street to this side of the street, and then put a desk next to that. So instead of a desk here, and a desk here, and a desk over there, where parts went for here for a while, and then they went over here for a while, then over here for a while. Put 3 desks next to each other in the same. And they go from here, and then they go from here, and they go from here, and we cut 4 days out of a process, and we're able to reallocate 2 or 3 people. The resistance, though, his name is Rick Klein. He's actually a big one up in Never now. He was concerned because it means eliminating people, right? If you cut a process to where now I no longer need these extra 4 days, I don't need these other things. What do I do with my people? They go away, and you say, no, we never had, every general in the history of man has said we don't have enough people and we don't have enough land, right? So if I can take 2 people over here, free them up, I can give them to you. Now you've got more. And so I think that's a lot of the resistance on these lean initiatives, especially from a leadership perspective, is if you can identify weaknesses and inefficiencies in the process that I've been managing, it makes me look bad, right? And it's very rarely celebrated that a manager was able to cut what time or expense or whatever out of his process, basically identifying that it's been inefficient for a number of years. That's the real. That's a tough sell. It's a tough thing for people to admit. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but that is some of those the resistance of it, and why sometimes it's difficult. So human behavior is the hardest thing to change. I can change the color of this room in about an hour and a half, but I can't change it so that you both like it, right? Yeah, so it's an interesting discussion. You'd mentioned like agile being a piece of that. I think agile is a similar process, but because IT is just such a fast moving technological thing, you kind of have to take lean and strip it down to as basic as right. And yeah, exactly, like really lean, but that would,
it's funny, the agile guys will all come in and ask us to teach them about lean.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of lean agile on things that we're doing agile, but bringing lean. And one thing I want to say about like people lean, like, well, we won't work with a company if we're going to say there's a no layoff rule when we're doing this lean implementation. Yeah, people might lose their job for ineffectiveness or whatever, but if you're not, you got to teach the people to where if they're going to improve a process, we're not improving the process so you don't have a job. We're going to move you into another area. And a lot of what we do, the greatest benefit is people have the ability to get cross-trained in other areas.
Yeah,
and that's what they want to do.
The other thing is people say, I always kept a little bit of flex with some temps, just
Mhm.
because, you know, they got really slowed down. But we had a no layoff rule, and what we did was, if you had people, it's almost thing, put them on something, they can work on improvement, they'll pay their more than many times. So we put them on improvement beds, they work full-time on that until something else.
Well, every employee wants to be developed.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this job and just have it this thing that I do forever in perpetuity. I want to be developed. And so in these processes, you don't have enough time, you don't have enough money, you don't have enough land or people to develop your folks. But if you can make those efficiencies, it reduce your costs, then you can, like with my extra people, I can say, okay, we're going to put you into a new role over here. You're going to learn a new skill. And so the no layoff policy, I think, is a good thing. And I think it'd be interesting to identify also where the senior or the manager says, where do you not have enough people, or where do you not
Right,
have enough
absolutely.
assets, or where do you not have enough skill sets? Because one of the first things that I would do also is identify people's skill sets. During a lean project with lumber liquidators, I found out that one guy used to run a recycling place in wherever he came from. And so when we did the lean, we're like, "Ah, we have an extra person now. This guy is going to be the guy who basically runs our recycling process, and you wouldn't know that he had those skills unless you asked, and you would not have leveraged him unless you had made something else efficient." So
Yeah, I used to, with the 8 plants, I used to say to them, listen, just 7 of the plants are doing well and one's doing poorly, then we all fail.
yeah,
So we did was we moved people over to plants, we'd have people pick up work for them and all, and you have a little bit, and that's the way we got very good utilization out of the people. Plus, they learned about the other businesses and all by doing it. Some of it, they didn't even have to go there to do, you know?
that was a cool discussion.
You mentioned Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, the Gallup. I would imagine that there's a lot of the books that we've been reading incorporate the lean process. Gung Ho is another one that
Right.
that comes to mind, that is simplified version of lean, I would assume.
Well, we also talked about when we met, I think, Atomic Habits. I read
Yes,
that.
that's
He
right.
incorporate, that's really what it is. To,
Yes.
like, I mean,
Indeed.
he has a couple of examples in there, but that's really the behaviors and the mindset of what we're
Yeah,
trying.
right. James has one of thinking fast and
Thinking
slow.
fast and slow.
Slow.
Yeah, yeah.
Great, great.
Have you started going through that?
Yeah.
That's a big book, though.
Well, you know what I did? You know what I did was I read the executive summary.
See that.
And then I went in and,
Then my highlights, right?
yeah, his highlights. and what the
It's
way
not a
to
big
go.
book. If you make him read it, he highlights it and gives it back.
Yeah,
to you.
I
that's so
can't
much
keep
That's a
up
very
with
lean
them.
process right there. That's pretty good.
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, one of the things that I was very fortunate, when we started doing Covey, one of his sons managed our account.
Really?
So I got to go out and meet him at a leadership training session. It was really kind of cool, you know. And then later on, the Shingo Prize is something about operational excellence. I was the chair at one point of that award, you know. And so Dr. Covey got involved with it. He had spent time with Toyota quite a bit. And he got involved with Utah State. And I had 2 occasions where I got to spend days with him
Oh, interesting.
in a small group.
Mhm.
I'm going like, and the first day people, he knows your name. No, I got a name tag. No, but I did get to know him. And when I wrote the book, he had indicated that send it to me, Jerry, I'll read it. And I'm sure I'm gonna like it. I'll give you an endorsement. And I couldn't reach him. And I found out he had a bicycle accident, hit his head, and 2 months he was dead.
Yeah.
But what a,
It
you
would have been
know,
a nice endorsement.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, but another great book is his son's book, Speed of Trust. That is, people don't trust you. How hard is it to get things done where you gotta provide all this information? And I go like, don't you trust me? Don't you think I'm gonna do a good job on it? It just, so, and the politics get involved also. I really like that book a lot. It's another one you have to distill it down.
Speed of Trust or 7 Habits?
Speed of
Speed of
Trust,
Trust,
7
yeah.
Habits, the 8th Habit, I think is,
Yeah.
greatness is really a good one. A lot of the Shingo is
Mhm.
built on
Because
that.
I think Speed of Trust is 13, So I wonder if his dad's like, well, if it was double, let's cut it down at least one. And then,
So back in the day, they had us do, remember TQM, TQL?
sure.
Who was that? What was that based on? Because, because in the military perspective, leaders would go to TQM, TQL, and then it changed into Lean, and it changed into Six Sigma.
Yeah, Durant, I mean, but it was, quality is free, was the
Crosby?
Crosby really kind of pushed that along, and then the quality organizations embraced it. What was the problem with that? Quality was playing more of the sheriff, more of the imposing things, so they ran into a lot of resistance with a lot of people. Because now they're gonna make us do this and that.
But that was a lot of Deming, right? Deming, Duran.
Deming, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny that, when I worked for Allergan, they got to do TQM, and the guy who was heading it up, they brought in from the outside, and he had printed on everybody's paycheck, the motto for it: quality comes first, FURST.
That's
He
fun.
was only there for 2 more weeks before he was gone. Killed the whole, it was the biggest joke.
That's
So
hilarious.
you gotta make sure, if you're talking about quality, that.
It's almost like a Simpsons joke.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, it really is.
But, any questions from you guys that,
Selena or Heidi, any questions? So I'm wondering now, for instance, I know that Heidi has, Selena's got a question?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay, okay, Heidi has taken this process that I have, which is basically taking the Gallup 12, the Q12,
Yeah.
and I reworded it so that I could use
Yeah, we
it.
just, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So now Heidi has taken those 12 questions and made it into a digital program, like a 14-week program, I think. And so you're trying to raise your score on each one of those items. And then there's questions that go with it. But it sounds to me like that is, there's a lot of lean involved in that. So I imagine the Gallup people leaned on lean to come up with that.
yeah, it's amazing how it just has exploded around the world.
Mhm.
I mean, dairies are doing it, you know,
Farms.
It's just,
It's in
it's in
farming,
everything.
construction.
And what's happening is that
Finance.
people like it because you can distill it down so people can participate. They don't have to open up a manual.
Right.
As if I know these basic fundamentals, I can go do something. And, you know, but again, I don't want to bash Six Sigma or Agile. They're valuable.
I just think.
Used correctly, you know, it's like, we used to say Six Sigma was a tool in search of a problem. I want to use this. I could put this tool at Sears. I want to use it. What can I use it? It's not really that
Well,
way.
you would agree probably, right, that of all the strategies, we found like, we think this one's the best one. Like the other strategies are good, but we think this offers the best value. And that's why I have been, you know, just as passionate as he has about doing this, because we really believe in it.
It's frustrating. We go in places and there's a number of places in town. We're going, it's like, I'm glad I don't work here. This is really frustrating and they don't have broad, man, these poor people.
Yeah.
I'm getting pains in my stomach walking
Yes.
through here. And then you talk to the executives, oh, we're doing all right. We're doing you have no clue as to
Right.
what's going on
Sure.
in your business,
Well-
and it's fixable.
One thing I thought this was funny, the Onion has some good business stuff from time to
Talking about the
time.
onions hilarious.
And this one was, showed like pieces of bread really starting to pile up for overworked duck. And how it is, and that's just like how, like with the, you know, the backlog of paperwork we have, all the work in process, to me, like, I think that kind of,
Uh-huh.
you know, gets you thinking about that, and sometimes that's what I do to teach, is like the sillier the better, it
Right.
resonates with people.
I just don't want to forget, so I'm gonna take a picture real quick. I know you've got one, but,
No, no, you.
Okay.
Okay.
all right. 1, 2,
Thank you. Thank you, Ron.
continue.
During my training, I have a slide, so 20 that apply to business, like it's an icebreaker.
So how did you find this? Was this okay today, what we did?
How did I find it?
Yeah, how did you find what we presented and shared?
When you say, how did we find it, you don't mean, how do we look at it?
No,
and found it?
No, it's a good reminder. Human behavior is the hardest thing to change, and these types of programs, like I had an employee who basically did enough so she was indispensable,
Yeah.
right? And then first thing I did with eyes open, he said, "What do you do? How do you do? Then who do you communicate with? What does it do?" And all these pieces, and you realize that she was one of these kind of people, just moving the crap around. And at the end of the day, she was, "Okay, I'm done with my day," and nothing is different.
Yeah.
And it's just a good reminder for any business that there are those type of people, like you said, the Gallup, and that's what they do. And there are other people who are simply not engaged. You get those engaged, to get people engaged, usually it has to do with a sense of purpose. And if they understand their purpose, then that engagement goes up dramatically. And then you say, let's try to improve what you're doing. Sometimes they're not engaged because they think they're doing stuff for no good reason. They're just doing stupid busy work. And if you can empower them to change some of those processes, that's how you get employees engaged. And I know exactly. I received a Zoom meeting request on a Monday. It was for Wednesday morning. I said, I hope I get laid off. If I don't get laid off, I'm gonna be mad, because it was one of those. I was doing a good job, but you just didn't have that purpose.
Yeah.
The lean, I think, is incredibly important, and we just don't see it. Also, a business leader will sometimes see it as an expense to bring somebody in, because just like the customer value is made at the cash register, right? They keep coming back to the cash register and keep giving their money. They see processes almost as an expense, not a revenue generator. And so that's another.
It's also the short-term versus long-term thinking. You might have to invest a little bit on the front end to get that benefit down the line.
Right.
Yeah, and people say what's lean. Ono was the guy who was the inventor of Toyota. I know he was the architect. And he says it's real simple. It's about cash flow. We pay for it here, and we get our money here. We're trying to compress the cash flow,
Right,
and generate more so we can invest in it and not borrow.
Yeah.
And some of this stuff it can't be that simple.
it is that simple.
It is, but it's like Mark Twain said, common sense is uncommon, and it is. I mean, I know some of the smartest people that I've worked with, PhDs, and you don't get it. I mean, come on.
Well, it's funny, if you read like the ancient Greek philosophy or the Stoics or anything, they're talking about all this same stuff 2,500 years ago. And it just shows you the common sense is uncommon. And that's why one of the things there is a challenge with getting people to change that. But once they buy into that kind of mindset, we don't have to make things complicated. That's how we make it easier on ourselves.
Yeah.
To thrive.
I think this stuff is also self-selling. I don't, it was big for a while, then it kind of dissolved a little bit. I don't know if it's
Now
still being taught.
It's gone crazy.
And,
now around
with the
world.
consortium and getting out there
Yeah.
and kind of shaking hands, that I don't think you will drive yourself out of business by not using something like
Yeah,
that.
well, look at it. I went to the Jaguars, and I said to Mark Lampa, somebody knew me, hey, Mark, I'm sick and tired of waiting online at your concession stands. It's stupid. Well, we got a TV. I don't want to watch it on TV. I want to.
Mhm.
So we said, what do you want to do? I said, give me your biggest concession stand and give me a couple of games, and I'll go in there and we'll take a look at it and we'll improve it.
Oh, interesting. How'd that work?
It worked pretty good. Lamping spoke about it publicly a couple of times, but
Mhm.
what happened was they said, okay, but here's the rule. You can't move anything. Can't move the beer kegs, anything. Can't move anything. And here's the other kicker. We have different people in the concession stand every week, only 2 regulars.
Mhm.
I said, that's okay. So we studied it, and over 2 games, we improved the throughput by 47% in that stand. We could have, if we could move some stuff, but what we did was we created standard work. Stop going around here. This is your job. You wear a blue hat. Blue hat people do this. If we give you a red one, you follow the red. And then we had somebody that was kind of moving the people through.
Mhm.
And then we looked at, what people were buying and all that. And I said, so it works everywhere. And Lampin was like, Jerry, this is amazing. I'm gonna go back to them again because there's so much opportunity for what they can do and all that. But the number one lean dentist in the world, lean dentist, been at it for 15 years. It's here in Jacksonville, Dr. Sammy Barr, number one in the world for Jim Womack. He's the leanest dentist on the planet. What he's done shows that it can be done anywhere. So in the hospitals now, healthcare, it's gigantic. I have a friend of mine who has 200 hospital systems in a consortium. Okay, he's a really great lean guy leader. And they're doing the 7 hospitals in New York, and they're just taking all the waste out. And when he first went to do it, he retired. He was early. It's like 54 years old. Retires as president of 3 hospitals in Appleton. So we got to fix this healthcare thing. People thought he was nuts. Now he's got 200. He's got Johns Hopkins. He's got UCLA. You know, one thing that Womack, I want to leave you with this, just said to me was, Jerry, if somebody tells you it's impossible, then you tell them we better start today. Because half of the things that people say impossible haven't been tried. People thought I was out of my mind when I went to do the consortium here. We get up to 48 organizations. You'll never be able to do it. Watch us. Why? Because it has a good purpose. It really helps people.
That's inspirational. Appreciate that very much. And I appreciate you coming and describing it to us. And I think, you know, as for me, I learned a lot and thinking about how I can apply the lean principles and to not be afraid of it.
Well, and I think the thing is, you know, how can you apply it to how you help people? Like, what would I do? How can I take these? Where is my waste? Yeah, where are my, undesirable effects? You just go and say, it's just start and you apply it to what you're doing. I mean, it's.
I know a lot of the processes you're talking about are like with managing people and stuff, but I have a small apartment, and so I'm managing that space constantly. I have a 1-year-old and my husband and 2 bedrooms, and so I am constantly trying to optimize how the space is used. And I'm never done because, you know, there's different purposes all throughout the home. And so just that whole, I think just because you said it's never complete. And so it makes me, I don't know, makes me think of that.
I think if you think about it, that book, everything I learned about lean, I learned in the first grade, it's a cool thing because it's a common sense. You go, yeah, why did I not? Why
I
am I
would
not?
say, you know, we've done several trainings and we've been using that book the last 2. I would say like at least like half of the people have applied what they learned in that book to their personal space in their home. Because
Really?
it's like, this is just crazy what we're doing. How can I
Oh,
make
yeah.
it easier?
I go to my parents' house and the coffee pot's over there and the coffee cups are 5 cabinets over.
Well,
I'm like, you put the coffee cups right above the coffee pot so you stand in one place and, you know, and then you move on.
We showed a lean toast video, a buddy of his making toast for his wife, and they talk about all the waste in it and how can you even make that like an easy
It
process.
really lays it out. His name is Bruce Hamilton. He's a good friend of mine. And when he first did this, he said, I don't know what this is going to do. I paid some guy, a videographer, to do this. But I said, oh yeah, buy a copy. It was $100. I'll buy a copy from him. Will you? And I said, I'll spread the word. You know, if I like it. So I really liked it a lot. Now, that particular video on how he made toast, he had a more professionalized film, is in 18 different languages and is sold somewhere around $10 million worth.
How many pieces
No,
of
I've never
toast have
seen
been?
it.
How to make
Literally
toast
just
for my
making
wife, Corey. And people go, yeah, this is, I'm wasting all this
Well,
movement.
since I've done the training, I have like surveys about like that. I've never gotten anything less than outstanding for that video. And that's,
Really?
it just shows you it resonates with people.
Yeah, it's a great video. It really-
Never having seen it, I'm gonna look it up. Is it literally just a video of a guy making toast?
Absolutely. It's doing making toast for his wife.
And talking about
And it
the origins
shows,
of lean.
there's 8 ways, okay, that they talk about.
Okay.
And you look at the 8 ways,
Okay.
and he illustrates.
So he
those
talks
ways.
about the current state and then he creates a future state, a better version of, so
Yeah.
like, as you're saying, you're not like, you know, reaching around, going all around, everything's right where you need it.
And people, it helps them learn because they apply, they look, well, I do this in my own life. And then there's work, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so it's cool. Let's go, Kaizen, is it
Kaizen toast.
I think so.
Kaizen is just Japanese, so
Yeah.
making things better.
No,
Okay.
it's well worth it.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and stop the meeting at this point.
Yep.
So, thank you very much. See you, Heidi, Selena, and, yeah, have a wonderful, wonderful month. See you next month. Actually, we won't see you in July because July 4th is a Monday. So we'll skip it and we'll go right to August.
See you in August.
Yeah, and we might be talking about traction in August. That's the book Traction that came out. So we'll be talking about that. So hope to see you in August. Have a great month.
Have a good one. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.